The sinister discovery of the cursed boots, unexplained hauntings from the deep web exposed. The chill in the air matched the growing unease that seeped into Sarah's bones. Alone and exhausted after her night shift, she scrolled aimlessly through the murky depths of the internet, her mind dull and heavy. That as when she stumbled upon it, the cursed military boots, murky with history and shrouded in darkness. They bring misfortune to whoever owns them, the page warned, and with a reckless pulse, Sarah clicked purchase. What had she done? That night was when the darkness swelled. The kitchen lights flickered as if trying to escape the grasp of an unseen force. Shadows twisted in the corners of her periphery. Whispers danced in the still air, taunting her. Jake had always been her light. Now he wandered the hallways, his laughter replaced with silence. What was happening? And young Lily, sweet, innocent Lily, was no better. She giggled to herself, chattering with an imaginary friend that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. They weren't just whispers. They were giggles, sinister and echoing through the house. Something was wrong. Sarah's heart raced as she pressed her back against the wall, her hands trembling, mind racing from terror to confusion. She forced herself to breathe, fighting against the tightening grasp of panic. Jake's playful spirit dimmed, replaced with sorrowful eyes that haunted her. "Mommy, I had the dreams again," he would whisper, eyes wide, as if he could see the monsters lurking within their walls. Before she even had time to process, she felt it, the cold hand of dread creeping around her throat. Trying to maintain control, she called the local police. "Ma'am, it sounds like you're stressed. Maybe take a moment to breathe," the officer replied, dismissing her fears as if they were wisps of smoke. And then there was Mr. Cole, always popping by, asking questions, offering help. Something about his persistent grin made her stomach twist. "You should tell me more about those boots," he'd say, his eyes glinting with an unsettling energy. With each visit, her heart sank further, realizing she might have invited something sinister not just into her home, but into their lives. From the depths of her fraying sanity, Sarah uncovered tales of the boots' previous owner, another man like her husband, who vanished in the night, leaving only questions. Panic seized her as the pieces fell into place, the chilling familiarity of their disappearances rattling in her mind. And just like that, the whispers escalated. They became screams, slithering through the night, drowning out Jake's cries. The very air felt electric, dark shadows flickering against the walls, creeping closer to her children. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Heart racing, Sarah felt the hair on her neck stand as she glanced toward Lily's room. The laughter had stopped. The air was thick with silence, and her little girl stood in the center of the room, eyes bright and vacant. She turned to Sarah and said, "They want to play." Fear washed over Sarah, choking her. She had felt the tightening grip of darkness around her family. Was Mr. Cole the ally she thought, or was he entwined with the encroaching nightmare? The thought paralyzed her. Was she losing her grip, or was this only the beginning? The line between protector and prey tangled tighter around her as shadows loomed large, silently asking one haunting question: could she save them before it was too late? Sarah's breath quickened, her chest constricted with suffocating dread. "Lily, honey, what do you mean?" she asked, forcing the words through a throat parched with fear. The child turned once more, an eerie smile etched on her tiny face, as if she had crossed the threshold into another world. "They want to play hide and seek, Mommy. It's fun." The innocence in her voice clashed violently with the sinister chill that danced along Sarah's spine. "Not now, sweetie. We need to go back to bed," Sarah stammered, trying to muster a calming tone, while an avalanche of anxiety bombarded her thoughts. She could feel the shadows closing in, vibrating with an unsettling energy. "Let us play in the morning, okay?" Lily shook her head vigorously. "They don't want to wait. They say if you don't join, you'll—" Her voice faltered, and glancing behind her, the little girl's expression transformed from delight to horror. "They'll take you away." The room fell into a deafening silence as a distant thud resonated through the walls, making Sarah jump. Panic clawed at her chest. She needed to regain control. She needed to save her children. "Show me who's there," she whispered, gathering what strength she could. Without hesitation, Lily stepped forward, as if drawn by an invisible force. "Come on, Mommy." She giggled again, joyfully, yet with a sharp edge that cut through Sarah's resolve. The innocence was gone, replaced by something darker. A low growl rumbled from deep within the house, a sound so unnatural it sent a shockwave through Sarah's veins. She felt the temperature drop, her breath visible in icy puffs before her. The walls began to pulse, breathing in sync with the mounting tension. Then, a soft scratching noise echoed from the hallway, grinding against her ears. Sarah's pulse raced, pounding like thunder in her ears. "Jake?" she called desperately, her heart aching at the thought of losing her son to this nightmare. "Mommy!" A voice cried out from the depths of the house, his voice filled with genuine fear. It was faint, muffled by the walls, but real enough to send Sarah sprinting down the hallway. The shadows danced along the edges of her vision, whispering beneath their breath. "Don't leave me alone!" she screamed, panic clawing at the edges of her sanity. Yet, the laughter returned, haunting and vile. It rippled against the walls, growing louder with each step. Sarah felt as if the very foundations of her home trembled beneath her feet, raising the hairs on her neck. When she turned the corner, the dim light from the living room barely illuminated a figure standing in the dark. This shadow was taller, more sinister. As she squinted, the figure morphed into a grotesque imitation of Jake, his familiar features twisted into something ghastly, eyes wide, pleading, "Mommy! Help me!" A gnarled hand emerged from the corner, reaching and grasping at the air, fingers curling as they beckoned her nearer. "No!" Sarah shouted, reeling back as tendrils of fear coiled around her being. She glanced back at Lily, now standing eerily still. "We need to leave. Now!" Panic-laden thoughts raced through her mind, knowing the danger was not just lurking, it was right in front of her. But the way out was labyrinthine, shadows swallowing her home, shifting shapes that had no patience. "Lily, where's the door?" Sarah cried, feeling the approach of cold, viscous dread. "They don't want you to leave," her daughter murmured, unfazed, voice as sweet as poisoned honey. Each moment felt like an eternity, the terror crawling under her skin. Time mattered less now. The only thing that mattered was the escape. But even as she tried to move forward, the oppressive weight of hopelessness pressed down. Every shadow kicked back, stalling her progress with mocking laughter. Heart racing and pulse pounding, Sarah's instincts screamed that time was short. What waited in the darkness? Was it too late? With one last desperate shout, Sarah plunged into the encroaching shadows, racing against the unseen forces threatening to drag her and her family into their macabre game. But as she reached for the light switch, the power flickered, and she was met with a wretched laugh. In that moment, a chilling realization pierced her thoughts. They were already playing, and she had no idea of the real stakes at hand. Could she face what's lurking ahead, when there may be nothing left of her children to save? The darkness stretched out like a living entity, coiling around Sarah, wrapping her in a suffocating embrace. She had to find Jake. Had to push through whatever horror gripped her home. With every step, the shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, shimmering like oily ink. Each breath tasted stale, a reminder of the chilling dread consuming her. "Lily, stay close," she ordered, her voice straining against the heavy silence. The little girl complied, but her eyes glimmered with an alien light, filled with a deep-set longing, as if she were already part of something forbidden. A flicker of movement caught Sarah's attention. "Jake?" she called again, her voice trembling. The only reply was that dreadful silence, punctuated by an unsettling creak from the rafters above. Panic surged through her, and she quickened her pace, nearly stumbling over an unseen object on the floor. As she bent to see what it was, a pair of scuffed, dark boots stared back at her like sentinels from the grave. They emanated a sense of wrongness, thick with the weight of something she couldn't name. An impulse to touch them took hold, but she pulled her hand back, instinctively aware that these were not just shoes discarded carelessly. A low chuckle echoed through the hall, reverberating off the walls. Panic surged anew. Someone or something was watching. "Mommy, they want to play." Lily's words trailed off, her voice now far too sweet, too inviting. She was slowly backing away, her grin stretching wider, as if enchanted by the ghastly laughter creeping into the room. "Lily, don't!" Sarah shouted, her heart racing, but it was too late. The child turned, darting into the flickering shadows that danced about like bait laid for a predator. "No!" Sarah screamed, lunging forward, the world around her collapsing into chaotic fragments of dread and echoing giggles. The boots pulsed with a sickening glow, drawing her eyes in with a hypnotic force. Desperation gripped her throat as she stumbled over the threshold of the living room. The air felt thick, wrapping around her limbs like chains. The laughter rose, enveloping her, a spiraling whirlwind of taunts echoing around the room. "Join us," Sarah, a disembodied voice rasped, cold and cruel. "You can't hide. This is where the game begins." She blinked hard, trying to clear her thoughts, but she felt her will wavering. The boots pulsed again, and with it, a vision flashed in her mind. A dark room filled with children, their faces missing, just hollow shapes playing, always playing. "No, no, no!" she gasped, shaking her head violently, pushing back against the allure. She had to hold on to herself, to Lily, to Jake. She stumbled backward into the living room, trying to retrace her steps. "Mommy!" a voice cried, an echo that fueled her fading resolve. It was Jake, but the voice came from everywhere and nowhere, twisting through the air, evoking a chilling sensation that felt more like it was scraping her soul than just air filling her lungs. With a thundering pulse, Sarah reached for the light again, the power flickering dangerously, shadows coiling closer around her as if alive, hungry. Then, she felt them, the cold fingers of something not of this world, wrap around her wrist, pulling her back into the thrumming darkness. "Join us," they urged, with the promise of play and the disdain of terrifying isolation. She wrestled free, heart racing as her eyes darted. Where was Lily? Where was Jake? A sudden rush of realization struck her. The boots? They were the key, the anchor to whatever this nightmare was. "I won't play your sick game," she screamed into the abyss. But even as she said it, chills washed over her, murmurs rising like a tide in response. Yet within the recesses of her dread, she spotted a flicker of light, fainter, but beckoning just beyond the writhing shadows. It was a chance. Sarah lunged towards it, clutching her heart in one hand, while the oppressive laughter dimmed, but didn't fade entirely. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown. Tension knotted inside her as she tore through the darkness, hopeful for a way forward. But as she reached the source of the light, something sinister whispered in her ear, slithering beneath her skin. "You may escape, but can you truly save them, when they are no longer your own?" And with that, a fresh terror blossomed within her, a question she couldn't allow herself to contemplate as she stepped into the light, not knowing if she was heading toward salvation or deeper into the game. What awaited her on the other side? The light flickered, and Sarah felt its grasp around her tighten, like a lifeline pulling her free from the abyss. But just as suddenly as it appeared, the brightness receded, leaving her standing at the threshold of a room that was indistinguishable from the rest of her darkened home. A chill danced across her skin, and the shadows seemed to crawl closer, eager to envelop her once more. "Jake? Lily?" she shouted, desperation spilling over into her voice. Her heart thudded like a war drum as she stepped inside, each footfall a battle against the encroaching fear. The air hung oppressively thick, every exhalation mingling with a sense of impending doom. Then she saw it, a silhouette at the far end of the room, shifting in the dim light. Breathing heavily, she approached, whispering names like prayers. Jake stood there, his back to her, head drooped low. Relief momentarily flooded her, but it was quickly torn apart by uncertainty. Something was off. "Jake," she called, her voice laced with dread. He didn't respond. The shadows flickered, and suddenly, the ground beneath her felt less stable. It throbbed with unnatural energy, pulsating as if it were alive. The laughing had returned, an echoing symphony of twisted mirth that bounced off the walls surrounding her. She reached out, her hand trembling as she touched Jake's shoulder. He turned, and her breath caught at the sight of his eyes clouded and vacant. "Jake? What is wrong?" Panic clawed at her throat when she met the hollow gaze that was once vibrant and full of life. "Mommy? Is it time to play?" His voice was dull, monotone, devoid of warmth, just like Lily's had been. "No, no, no. This isn't you." She collapsed to her knees, her heart racing, pulse hammering in her ears. "Wake up! Jake, please!" He only smiled, but it was a twisted smile, eerily stretched across his face as if the laughter around them fed off it. In that moment, she felt an icy dread seep into her bones. Slowly, he began to turn away, retreating deeper into the shadows, into a corner that swallowed all light. Unthinking, Sarah lunged forward, her body propelled by maternal instinct. "Jake!" But as she reached for him, something jerked her back, the unseen hands of the darkness gripping her. She fought against them, straining to break free, then heard it, a whisper curling around her mind like smoke, calling her to join the laughter. "Come play with us forever," it seduced, gliding over her mental barriers. Every word dripped with malignant allure, a promise shrouded in dread. "Get away from him. Get away!" she screamed, plugging her ears, but it did little to drown out the insistent laughter resonating inside. With a raw cry, she surged forward once more. This time, with the weight of determination thrumming through her, she broke free of the nightmarish bonds and rushed into the shadows. As she crossed into the dark, the oppressive weight lifted, if only slightly. "Jake, I'm coming!" she shouted, but with every step, the shadows tightened their grip on the room. The air grew colder, filled with the scent of decay and forgotten dreams, and then, as she turned a corner, Sarah stumbled upon something monstrous, a gathering of shadowed figures, resembling children, yet lacking the defining features that made them human. They played with dull, soulless abandon, their movements jerky and unnatural, their laughter chilling her to the core. "Look, it's Mommy!" One figure screeched, its voice exaggerated and mocking. They turned toward her, their features distorting in the flickering light a symphony of faces without eyes, grim smiles pulling their lips back in a grotesque parody of joy. Suddenly, a flash of recognition struck her. Lily. The terror twisted within her gut as she scanned the twisted horrors around her, desperate to find her daughter. "No more games, Sarah." Jake's voice rang out sharp and real, cutting through the chaos. He was standing, but still that vacant look wore his features, sinister and blank. "You can never win. Jake. We have to go. They're not real." But as her hands reached out for him, a voice, like static, crackled through the air. Join the game, Sarah forever. In that moment, a sickening realization pierced through her. She was not just fighting for her family. She was battling for her own soul. The air shimmered and rippled, and with every breath, Sarah felt more unmoored from reality. She had to rescue them, escape this nightmare. But the shadows closed in, whispers blending into a cacophony that choked her resolve. Soon, she would have to make a choice: sacrifice her children to save herself, or plunge deeper into the unending void. And as the laughter crescendoed, a new question arose. What if they didn't want to be saved? Sarah's breath quickened, her heart pounding louder than the taunting laughter that surrounded her. She staggered through the throng of shadowy figures, desperate for a glimpse of her children. Each step was a reminder of the heavy dread pressing down on her, the weight of choices yet to come. "Lily, where are you?" she shouted, and her voice felt small against the overwhelming noise. The figures swirled around her in a grotesque dance, their mockery lacing the air with an unbearable tension. "Mommy left us," one of the figures said, its voice dripping with sarcasm. "She doesn't want to play." "No!" Sarah screamed. "I'm here. I'm not leaving you." But the shadows twisted, morphing into grotesque imitations of her children. Their faces, once innocent and bright, were now distorted with malevolent grins. The air thickened, and a chill spiraled down her spine as their laughter echoed in her ears, painfully familiar yet deeply disturbing. Then, she caught sight of movement, a flicker of bright color among the muted shades. It was Lily's dress. Without thinking, Sarah pushed past the figures, her instincts roaring louder than her doubt. "Lily!" she cried, reaching out. As she lunged forward, a cold grip seized her wrist. The laughter intensified, shrill and mocking. "You can't touch her!" the shadow child shrieked. Sarah felt her hopes slip through her fingers like sand. Desperation clawed at her. "Let her go! I'll do anything. Just let me take her home." "Home?" Jake echoed, his voice dull and twisted, his face still bereft of life. "There is no home, Mommy. We're all here now. The game has just begun." Her flesh crawled as those words sank in, echoing against the cavernous walls of her mind. She could feel the walls around her closing in, darkness pressing against her, whispering promises of despair. "I don't want to play," Sarah gasped, struggling against the tightening grip of the shadows. But they only tightened their hold, laughter reverberating in rhythm with her frantic heartbeat. Panic surged as she faced a reality more terrifying than any nightmare. Her children were trapped, their forms twisted into the fabric of this sinister game. Were they even still alive? Ignoring the grip of darkness, Sarah pushed her body forward, fueled by a lurching hope. She stumbled straight into the crowd of figures, and for a split second, she could see Lily, a lithe silhouette standing among them, her dress fluttering like a wounded butterfly. "Mommy!" Lily's voice chimed sweetly, though there was an unsettling edge to it, as if it were laced with the very laughter that tormented her. "Hold on, baby. I'm coming." Sarah's heart surged. She fought against the phantom's grip, wrenching free with primal strength. There was a moment of silence, a beat where the world seemed to pause as she tore through the throng, reaching for her daughter. But suddenly, an overwhelming wave of darkness swept over her, and in an instant, everything changed. The shadows merged, morphing into a singular entity, looming over her with a dreadful presence. It loomed behind Lily, growing larger and more grotesque, feeding on the fear that radiated from Sarah. "Choose, dear mother," the voice of the shadows dripped like honeyed poison, "her soul or your own." Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her, the horror of the choice becoming a tangible weight on her chest. She glanced back at Lily, and in that moment, all the love she held for her surged forth, battling against the dark tide threatening to consume her. "Never!" she shouted defiantly, preparing for an all-or-nothing fight against the consuming void. But then came a realization, A truth lurking just beneath the surface. Had the shadows always known her deepest fears? Was this their game all along? As she braced herself for the confrontation, laughter erupted again, echoing through the darkness. And as the shadows danced closer, melding into something far more sinister, one last question flashed through her mind. What if saving one meant losing the other forever? Suddenly, a scream sharp and piercing ripped through the chaos. Where had it come from? Who was it? The laughter froze, and Sarah stood on the precipice of a decision that would echo through their lives for eternity. The shadows shifted, swirling anxiously as Sarah fought against the encroaching darkness. She felt a rising tide of panic, the weight of uncertainty threatening to pull her under. In that frozen moment, time seemed to stretch impossibly thin, and the world around her existed only in flickers of darkness and the haunting sounds of lost laughter. "Mommy!" The voice was clearer now, desperate, almost a whisper against the chaos. It was neither Lily S. nor Jake S. It sounded like a stranger, yet it resonated deep within her, a chilling echo of a child in need. Was it real? Or simply another trick of the shadows? Ignoring the laughter that clawed at her sanity, Sarah fought to center herself. "I'm coming!" she shouted, desperation fueling her voice. She pushed her way through the writhing mass of twisted figures, their features warped by malice. But something unnatural gripped her heart, a foreboding sensation that this was a trap set by darker forces. The trail of laughter resumed, escalating with each step she took, but Sarah kept her resolve. The shadows shifted, murmuring secrets that pressed against her mind. Whispers of choices made long before she stood there, whispers of betrayal. In her peripheral vision, she caught another flash of movement, a figure emerging from the shadows. It was small, hunched, yet undeniably human. The unmistakable form of a child. "Mommy," it called out, drawing her now with a mother's instinct. But as it stepped forward, the light caught its face, revealing a horrific mask of her son, warped into something monstrous and painfully sad. The sight made her stomach lurch. Unbidden, memories of Jake flared, his genuine smile previously filled with warmth and innocence. Now, he echoed the same ghastly laughter, twisting the nostalgia into something grotesque. "It's fun here, Mommy. You should join us." "You're not him," she screamed, her voice breaking. "You're not my son." Before she realized it, the darkness surged around her in a ravenous wave. It loved the fear spilling from her heart, intoxicating it as it writhed like a hungry beast. The child figure expanded, distorting even further into an animated mockery of her family, laughter trailing through the air like a sickening fog. "Make your choice," the looming presence growled, disdain dripping from every syllable. "I want to play your game," she shouted back defiantly. As the monstrous laughter echoed, drowning out her words, a cold touch brushed against her cheek. It was like ice, stopping her breath in her lungs. She turned, squinting into the murky depths, grappling for clarity, for a flicker of light to latch onto. It was then she spotted her daughter's dress again, still illuminated in a vibrant hue, a beacon amidst the desolation. "Lily!" Sarah screamed, reaching out. The shadows screeched in protest, pulling her back with a force that felt as if it could rip her apart. Then, the air shifted. The laughter faded to an unsettling silence. In that pause, Sarah felt a faint energy crackling in the air. Fear and desperation electrified her skin, awakening a primal instinct to fight. "Lily!" she screamed again, her voice raw with emotion. But in the wake of her determination, sudden realization struck. What if this was just about her? The chains binding her children, their laughter, those fervent cries for her, was it because they were trapped? Or was it a deeper, darker agenda at play? With a final glance back toward the abyss, Sarah stumbled toward the last glimmer of hope, the radiant dress fluttering like a banner of salvation. But with every step she took, She felt the ground slipping further beneath her. As darkness swallowed her whole, a chilling thought struck her. Was she racing toward liberation or toward something far more sinister? Everything around her went silent again, and for an agonizing heartbeat, Sarah didn't know where she was. She sensed the shadows sifting around her like sand, molding a new shape, something crueler than before. And then the laughter erupted again, not from the figures, but from somewhere above her, a horrific cackle that resonated like thunder through the silence. What would it take to silence that horrible sound? Would it drown her hope? Would it claim her children? Locked in a battle she could not comprehend, the shadows encircled her. And in that moment, the choice loomed once again. But this time, what if the only choice left was to let go? The darkness thickened around her, a living entity that pulsed with malignant energy. Sarah tried to focus, desperate to feel something, anything faintly human, but all she could sense was the oppressive weight of despair pressing in from all sides. It felt like being underwater, the surface far out of reach, and the haunting laughter above echoed like the taunts of lost souls. "Lily," she cried again, her voice strained and ragged. Silence swallowed the name, swallowed her hope. Shadows were all that answered, crawling closer with every breath, twisting and writhing, forming faces that twisted into cruel grins. Then, a flash, a shimmer flickered in the distance, coaxing her weak resolve. It was a small, glimmering light, no larger than the flame of a candle, but it flickered with a promise of clarity, of refuge. "That's it," she whispered to herself, jolted by a sudden spark of determination. "I can make it." With each hesitant step, the shadows recoiled, hissing and howling as she moved toward the warmth. It was like traipsing through a thick fog, the light drawing her with a gentle beckoning. She felt its pull deep within her, an urge stronger than the fear surrounding her. As she stepped forward, the laughter faded to murmurs, teasing her with cryptic words. "Come play with us," it taunted, shifting shapes that seemed to mock her every move. "Leave me alone," she shouted into the abyss, anger sparking a sense of bravery within her. The laughter crescendoed into a cacophony, drowning out her defiance, but it only fueled her fire. Finally, she broke through the shadows and plunged into the light. The world exploded around her, a vibrant forest, with colors so vivid they felt unreal. But the brightness came with a cost. The shadows flared angrily at her intrusion, swirling violently, each one reaching out as if to reclaim her. "Stay away," Sarah warned, heart pounding. She turned, scanning the new surroundings, desperate for signs of her children. But nothing remained, no trace of their voices, just a twisted silence that echoed hauntingly through the verdant trees. Then she spotted something at the base of a worn oak tree. It was small, almost entirely covered in moss, yet it gleamed her daughter's dress. "Lily." She ran to it, kneeling as the fabric spilled from her fingers. As she brushed dirt from the delicate threads, a chill shot through her spine. The dress was stained. Before she could process it, the air grew thick again. A low growl rumbled from the shadows that lingered like a storm waiting to be unleashed. Sarah whipped around to find a pair of eyes watching her, brilliantly red, glimmering like molten fire, burrowing into her soul. "What do you want?" she gasped, stepping back. The presence looming behind those eyes felt ancient, primal. Everything, a voice hissed, curdled and dark, slithering through the air like a serpent. "Your children, your very essence." With every heartbeat, the shadows pressed in tighter, arms reaching out, claws poised to snatch her back into the void she had just escaped. The laughter returned, booming like thunder, echoing off unseen walls. Join us forever," panic flared within her. Adrenaline surged through her veins. Sarah whipped around, her heart racing, searching for a way out. But that way was not visible. It felt like it was shifting once again, morphing into something sinister. "No!" she screamed, as a wave of darkness surged toward her, eager to drag her back. The presence besieged her, threatening to claw away her last flicker of hope. But then she recalled the light, the warmth, the safety. "I choose hope," she shouted defiantly. She turned to where she had seen the light, knowing time was running out. She felt an inkling of strength coursing through her with that declaration. Yet, the ground trembled violently beneath her, shadows ripping and tearing at her surroundings. "Foolish woman! You cannot escape." With a final push, Sarah launched herself into the light, praying it would swallow her whole and carry her away from this nightmare. And just as the darkness surged at her back, she felt the warmth wrapping around her, a cocoon of safety. But then, it all shattered to pieces. The light flickered, dimmed, and she was left on the precipice of oblivion once again. "Where are you?" she shouted, her voice barely more than a whimper against the chaos. And then, out of the quiet, a small voice emerged, soft, mournful. "Mommy," the sound sent shivers down her spine. Could it be Lily? Was it real? Or was it yet another cruel trick designed to lure her back into the shadows? With breathless anticipation, she turned toward the voice, but the world around her began collapsing, spiraling back into darkness, and the laughter rose once more, reverberating deep within her bones. What choice would lead her to salvation this time? The shadows danced menacingly around Sarah, flickering just out of reach, teasing her with echoes of laughter that stirred the primal fear deep within her. She felt the chill of their presence, more substantial now, almost tactile, like fingers grazing her skin. Heart racing, she swung her gaze around, searching desperately for any sign of Lily. The voice lingered in her ears, wrapped in a haunting timbre. Was it a trick of the shadows, or her daughter calling out for her? "Lily!" she shouted again, tears brimming in her eyes, her voice a mix of hope and dread. "Mommy," the voice returned, softer this time, but distant, a wisp carried on the breeze, pulling her towards the depths of the forest. It felt both familiar and foreign, igniting every instinct to rescue her child, but also cautioning her with dark promises. She stumbled forward, feeling the underbrush scratch at her legs, the damp earth sucking at her shoes. Each step felt agonizing, the shadows swarming, rasping against her, refusing to let her go. Their whispers shifted, a relentless chorus of her darkest fears. "You'll never get her back, you'll stay with us." Suddenly, a fierce wind kicked up, sending leaves swirling into a cyclone of green and brown. It caught her off guard, knocking her sideways. Panic ignited. Was this another obstacle, or was the forest itself warning her? "No! I will find her!" Sarah cried out defiantly. She pushed through the gusts, fighting the shadows pressing in on her, calling out Lily's name like a lifebuoy tossed into a tempest. The forest thickened, trees leaned in close, their gnarled branches, like skeletal hands reaching down, almost urging her to give in to despair. She clawed through the fetid air, desperation coiling in her gut. And then, there, behind a thick curtain of vines, another glimmer. It wasn't just a flicker. This light pulsed warmly, brighter than before. It seemed to beckon her, each pulse syncing with her racing heartbeat. "Lily?" She moved toward it, heart in her throat. But then she heard it, the guttural howl of something unspeakable coming from deeper within the woods. Panic rose again, like bile, choking her. "Please, don't take her from me," Sarah yelled, but the shadows laughed, a sound as ancient as the earth itself. As she stumbled forward, something caught her foot, a root, thick and twisted. She fell hard, catching her breath as panic clawed at her mind. Looking down, she noticed a pair of scuffed boots half buried in the dirt. They looked oddly out of place in this setting. Fingers trembling, she dug them free, dirt cascading down like a funeral shroud. But the moment the boots were free, a flash of cold fear shot through her. They weren't just old leather. They felt alive, as though they pulsed with a heartbeat of their own. The shadows recoiled momentarily before thickening once again, their laughter changing to low murmurs. "Those are not for you," the voice whispered, smooth as silk yet laced with venom. "They keep us, and you will join us." Sarah's stomach twisted. She could feel the weight of the boots, a chilling presence that felt intertwined with her fate. This dark entity wanted her to wear them, to succumb. The shadows swirled angrily, but she gripped them tighter, anchoring her resolve. This was a decision that could seal her fate. "Where is my daughter?" she screamed, brandishing the boots like a talisman against the encroaching dark. She felt something break within her, a resolve so fierce it bounced back at the shadows with a brilliant light, pushing them back for a fleeting moment. But would it be enough? As the darkness roared back, she knew that every choice she made could either save her daughter or pull her deeper into the abyss. "You must choose," the sinister voice crooned, chillingly close now. Sarah knelt, heart pounding, trembling fingers hovering above the cursed boots. What lay beyond this choice? A path to salvation or total annihilation? "Lily, I'm coming," she cried, the warmth of her fierce love flaring within her. And then she felt it. The ground beneath her trembled, shadows writhed in protest, as the world around her twisted into chaos. Would wearing the boots bind her to the darkness, or was it the key to finding her child? The forest howled, and the shadows lunged forward, leaving her no choice but to decide. Would she wear the cursed boots and risk everything, or fight the shadows bare? In the choice of a single heartbeat, the fate of both mother and child hung precariously in the balance. A surge of defiance coursed through Sarah as she faced the shadowy tide. The boots pulsed beneath her fingertips, alive with a dark energy that twisted her thoughts. "No," she breathed, as if saying it aloud could stave off the tendrils of temptation creeping into her heart. With one last look at the softly glowing light deeper in the woods, she made her decision. She couldn't go down without a fight. She pushed the boots away, shoving them back into the abyss of dirt and overgrown roots. The shadows shrieked, a banshee wail that rattled her bones. "Lily!" she shouted, her voice raw and wild. She lunged forward, the darkness clawing at her heels, desperate to reclaim what it had lost. She felt the cold breath of the shadows pressing upon her, threatening to snuff out her spark. Then, amidst the chaos, she heard it, a clearer sound, a distinct call no longer faded by distance. "Mommy!" It wrapped around her, pulling her through the blackness. Fueled by that single cry, she surged deeper into the forest. Running became a blur of limbs and branches, the gnarled trees grasping at her like grasping hands, trying to trip her, hold her back. But she propelled herself forward, following the echo of Lily's voice. Leaves crunched underfoot, each sound amplified against the stillness of the looming dark. But something shifted in the air, a heavy veil that pressed down, disorienting her. The witching hour had come alive with whispers, poor attempts at luring, murmurs from the fringes of her imagination. "Leave her, join us, stay, no!" she screamed, ripping through the whispers as she willed her legs to move faster. Fear and love intertwined, fuel igniting a primal instinct to protect her child. She burst through a thicket into a small clearing bathed in an eerie silver light. In the center, she spotted an old, withered tree, gnarled and ancient, its roots like coils of serpents. Something stirred at its base, something familiar. "Lily!" Sarah cried, her heart racing as she rushed toward the slender figure huddled close to the tree. But as she neared, dread washed over her. It was too still, too quiet. She touched Lily's shoulder, and her breath hitched at the chill of her skin. "Mommy," Lily murmured, but her eyes were glazed, a milky sheen haunting their depth. Panic clawed up Sarah's throat. This was T-Right, not her daughter. This was a husk, a mockery draped in the form of her child. "No!" Sarah shook her fiercely. "Wake up! You have to wake up!" But the shadows enveloped them, squeezing tighter, laughter erupting from the branches above like a grotesque symphony. Then, just as quickly as it began, Lily's eyes flickered, a moment of clarity, a spark. Mommy, the boots they want. But before she could finish, shadows poured from the earth, veiling them in murky darkness. Sarah gasped, clutching tightly to Lily, pulling her closer. Was this the abyss? Were they about to be consumed? Not like this, the voices shouted, rejecting, angry. Darkness roiled and twisted, and a rush of wind whipped through, pulling Sarah's hair back. Then, with a single surge, the ground heaved beneath her feet, a violent shake that stole her breath. Lily! Hold on! Sarah screamed, trying to shield her daughter. In the chaos, the image of the cursed boots flashed in her mind once more. What if they were the key? An answer, a salvation, or a damnation? Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, drowning out the world around them, and the shadows lunged again like a tidal wave. There was no more time. She had to act. But what would she sacrifice? Will you wear me? The voice crooned, seductive and dark. Will you choose the eternal over the fleeting? As the abyss threatened to swallow them whole, Sarah made her choice. But what would it mean for them both? Will you seize the darkness to save the light, or become part of the shadow's eternal night? As the ground shook violently, Sarah gripped Lily tighter, desperation flooding her veins. I will never choose darkness, she screamed, her voice echoing defiantly against the shadows swirling around them. The shadows hissed, their laughter turning into an enraged roar. But Sarah stood firm, heart racing, a mother's love ignited within her like a flame. Lily, just hold on. The shadows whispered that her daughter was gone, that trying to save her was futile. They braided fear with doubt, stealing her resolve. But Sarah wouldn't yield to their vile game. With one final deep breath, she recalled the light that had flickered in the forest, the warmth that had almost faded. No! She could still feel that hope flickering inside her, stronger than any malice of the shadows. The very ground trembled, threatening to tear them apart as the shadows lunged again, wanting desperately to claim what was theirs. Join us! They screamed, their voices a cacophony of pain and temptation. Family, forever, but Sarah would not succumb. You're wrong, she shouted back, forcing her will against their relentless grip. Family means choice, and love not chains. With that, an idea surged within her. What if the boots weren't the key to escape but a symbol of sacrifice, a way to confront the darkness directly rather than bending to it? She took a step forward, heart pounding, grounded by the ancient tree behind her roots digging deep into the soil, echoing the bond she shared with her children. If I have to wear them, I will, she declared, her voice steady and clear, commanding the darkness to listen. But it won't be for you. It will be for her. Her defiance rippled in the air, a promise she intended to keep. In that moment, she was a warrior against the abyss, refusing to let the shadows define her fate. Energies clashed, the darkness simmering and flashing, almost quaking at her declaration. Lily, I need you to wake up. Fight with me, she pleaded, the last words hanging between them like a thread dangling from a precipice. And then, with a fierce burst of willpower, Sarah tore through the shadows, clutching Lily closely, pushing beyond every barrier. Light flickered, bending around them, and as the shadows shrieked in protest, something shifted. Lily's eyes widened, the haze lifting from her face. Mommy? Yes. You're with me. We can fight this together. Breathless, they faced the mass of darkness that swirled hungrily, grasping at them, tendrils reaching out like grasping hands. You cannot choose both. The shadows hissed, but Sarah rallied her will, feeling Lily's warmth beside her. We can choose love. Together they shouted, and in an instant, the forest erupted in brilliant light, the warmth igniting everything around them, scattering the shadows like ashes in the wind. The boots pulsed violently in Sarah's mind, yet their allure faded into nothingness as the love for her children surged deeper. Each thrum resonated with the strength of their bond, lighting the way forward. Moments stretched like an eternity, But together they burst through the barrier of darkness, emerging into a radiant expanse that felt familiar. They were back in their home, sunlight streaming through the windows, fresh and inviting. They stood hand in hand, trembling yet safe, and the air felt clean, lighter. The whispers faded into nothingness, shadows retreating, banished by the power that had brought them back. In the quiet sanctuary of sunlight, Sarah collapsed to her knees, pulling Lily into a fierce embrace. "I was so scared," she whispered, tears running down her cheeks. The weight of darkness lifted but not forgotten, each breath a reminder of what they had overcome. "Mommy, it was so dark," Lily replied softly, but her voice was full of warmth, now alive with the sparkle of innocence returned. "I'm glad we're home." And just then, the front door creaked open. Jake appeared, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Their son was back, bright-eyed and filled with his playful energy. "What is going on? I heard you scream." Sarah's heart soared as relief washed over her. "Everything's okay now, Jake." "We're okay." As they embraced, laughter broke through the remnants of dread. They were together again, whole and free, love conquering the shadows. No more hauntings, no more darkness to ensnare them. Yet, the boots lay strewn on the floor behind them, a dark reminder that would forever stay in their history. "Let us never go there again," Jake said, his voice trembling. They nodded in agreement, forging a collective promise to protect their family no matter what. With the warmth of the sun washing over them, they stepped outside together, leaving the darkness behind, heading toward a future bright with hope, where love would always light the path ahead. But in the far recesses of the woods, shadows lingered, preparing for the next unwitting soul to wander too close. If you love this thrilling ride, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button and show your support. You know it fuels our fire. Flood the comments with your reactions and wild theories about this ending. And for true fans, share this video with at least 5 friends. Don't wait even one more second. Let us spread the thrill together.